Yeah, let's do it.
All right, good deal. All right, hey everybody, my name's Aaron. I'm an alcoholic.
All right.
All right, please join me in a moment of silence, followed by the Serenity Prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the
And the
wisdom.
wisdom to know the difference.
All right, welcome to the Thursday night emotional sobriety workshop. This is not a formal AA meeting, but a workshop put on by men and women interested in the continuation and maintenance of a spiritual awakening to stay recovered from alcoholism. This is not a substitute for AA for a 12-step big book recovery. In fact, we think that our exploration of this letter will only be relevant to someone who is actively working the program of recovery outlined masterfully in our AA big book. Everyone is encouraged to share what they are working on to mature and grow spiritually. Please enjoy the conversation and allow others to do so by maintaining an attitude of open-mindedness and tolerance. Our workshops this summer will be recorded in order to allow other members of our fellowship to enjoy these conversations, so please be mindful of that when sharing. Our meeting will begin with the reading of Bill Wilson's 1958 essay, The Next Frontier, Emotional Sobriety. After the reading, we will have a lead share, and the meeting will then be open for participation or questions. And let's see, I think Sam, or who's reading it?
I'll just do it tonight. I thought Corey was going to do it. And the only reason for the spirit of, sometimes we read the wrong one. And so I've just been reading it because I'm kind of a control freak. So, but Corey's not here. So the next time I'll prepare and give it to somebody else. So, you here, Corey? You here, Corey?
Yes.
You ready to read this?
I've got the internet version. You go ahead and take that one, boss.
Okay. All right. So the way our format of our meeting works is I'll read this. It's kind of a long reading, so just kind of be patient with it. Usually, and I'm ashamed last time, Jeff, we have some new modifications, but since Chris isn't here to host it, we have it where we can like pop it up on the screen when we read it, but we don't have that today. So we're just going to have to make do. So I'll go ahead and read the essay. Love, the Next Frontier, Emotional Sobriety, written in January 1958. I think that many oldsters who have put our AA booze cure to a severe but successful test still find they often lack emotional sobriety. Perhaps they will be the spearhead for the next major development in AA, the development of a much more real maturity and balance, which is to say humility in our relations with ourselves, with our fellows, and with God. Those adolescent urges so many of us have for top approval, perfect security, and perfect romance. Urges quite appropriate to age 17 proved to be an impossible way of life when we were at age 47 or 57. Since AA, I have taken immense wallops in all of these areas because of my failure to grow up emotionally and spiritually. My God, how painful it is to keep demanding the impossible. And how painful to discover that finally, and how very painful to discover finally that all along we've had the cart before the horse. Then comes the final agony of seeing how awfully wrong we have been, but still finding ourselves unable to get off the emotional merry-go-round. How to translate a right mental conviction into a right emotional result, and so into happy and good living. Well, that's not only the neurotics problem, it's the problem of life itself for all of us who have gotten to the point of real willingness to hew to right principles in all our affairs. Even then, as we hew away, peace and joy may still elude us. That's the place so many of us AA ultras have come to, and it's a hell of a spot. How shall our unconscious, from which so many of our fears, compulsions, and phony aspirations still stream, be brought into line with what we actually believe, know, and want? How to convince our dumb, raging, and hidden Mr. Hyde often becomes our main task. I've recently come to believe that this can be achieved. I believe so because I begin to see many benighted ones, folks like you and me, commencing to get results. Last autumn, depression, having no rational cause at all, almost took me to the cleaners. I began to be scared that I was in for another long, chronic spell. Considering the grief I've had with depression, it wasn't a bright prospect. I kept asking myself, why can't the 12 steps work to release my depression? By the hour, I stared at the St. Francis Fair's prayer. It is better to comfort than to be comforted. Here was the formula, all right, but why didn't it work? Suddenly, I realized what the matter was. My basic flaw had always been dependence, almost absolute dependence on people or circumstances to supply me with prestige, the security, and the like. Failing to get these things according to my perfectionist dreams and specifications, I had fought for them, and when defeat came, so did my depression. There wasn't a chance of making the outgoing love of St. Francis a workable and joyous way of life until these fatal and almost absolute dependencies were cut away. Because I had over the years undergone little spiritual development, the absolute quality of these frightful dependencies had never before been so starkly revealed. Reinforced by what grace I could secure in prayer, I had to exert every ounce of will and action to cut off these faulty emotional dependencies upon people, upon AA, indeed upon any set of circumstances whatsoever. Then only could I be free to love as Francis had. Emotional and instinctual satisfactions I saw were really the extra dividend of having love, offering love, and expressing a love appropriate to each relation of life. Plainly, I could not avail myself to God's love until I was able to offer it back to him by loving others as he would have me. And I could not possibly do that so long as I was victimized by false dependencies. For my dependency meant demand, a demand for the possession and control of the people and conditions surrounding me. While those words absolute dependency may look like a gimmick, they were the ones that helped trigger my release into my present degree of stability and quietness of mind, qualities which I am now trying to consolidate by offering love to others regardless of their return to me. This seems to be the primary healing circuit, an outgoing love of God's creation and his people by means of which we avail ourselves of his love for us. It is most clear that the real current can't flow until our paralyzing dependencies are broken and broken at depth. Only then can we possibly have a glimmer of what adult love really is. Spiritual calculus, you say? Not a bit of it. Watch any AA of 6 months working with a new 12-step case. If the case says to the devil with you, the 12-stepper only smiles and turns to another case. He doesn't feel frustrated or rejected. If his next case responds and in turn starts to give love and attention to other alcoholics, yet gives none back to him, the sponsor is happy about it anyway. He still doesn't feel rejected. And still he rejoices that his one-time prospect is sober and happy. And if his next following case turns out in later time to be his best friend or romance, then the sponsor is most joyful. But he well knows that his happiness is a byproduct, the extra dividend of giving without any demand for return. The really stabilizing thing for him was having and offering love to that strange drunk on his doorstep. This was Francis at work, powerful and practical, minus dependency and minus demand. In the first 6 months of my own sobriety, I worked hard with many alcoholics. Not a one responded. Yet this work kept me sober. It wasn't a question of those alcoholics giving me anything. My stability came out of trying to give, not out of demanding that I receive. Thus, I think it can work out with emotional sobriety. If we examine every disturbance we have, great or small, we will find at the root of it some unhealthy dependency and its consequent unhealthy demand. Let us, with God's help, continually surrender these hobbling demands. Then we can be free to live and love. And we may then be able to 12-step ourselves and others into emotional sobriety. Of course, I haven't offered you a really new idea, only a gimmick that has started to hook several of my own hexes at depth. Nowadays, my brain no longer races compulsively in either elation, grandiosity, or depression. I've been given a quiet place in the bright sunshine. And, Jeff's done this for me once before, done this for us once before, but it was limited to my smaller format where it's just the guys I sponsor before we opened it up. And, he's one of those guys. I hate to feel like there's like this celebrity relationship, but sometimes there's people that you just really respect and love to watch and listen to. And he's one of the guys. I'm a big fan of Jeff Gould in the AA sense of the word. So I won't take up any further time. And Jeff, take it away, man.
I'm Jeff. I'm a recovered alcoholic. Sam, that's high praise. And I've been nervous for about an hour. And I'll be honest with you. I don't really get nervous before these. I've spoke to crowds much larger than this, and nervous is something I don't get. But I was today. Wasn't sure what that was about. But I'm Jeff. I'm an alcoholic. My home group is Smoking Gun Big Book Step Study of Dallas, Texas. My sponsor is Mike M. in Cedar Rapids. Fellowship of the Spirit in Colorado is my home conference, and I look forward to hopefully being back there next year. We'll see. I think maybe I was nervous because, well, there's 102 people on here. And by the nature of this topic, your guts are going to end up on the table. It's kind of unavoidable, right? But it's interesting that I see 102 people here, and I think that's why people come, right? Is because they want to, I mean, this is way past slogans. Like, let's talk about life in recovery, right? Or the absence thereof. And so I was just sitting here thinking about, when I came into recovery on November 22nd of 2002, and I was pressed heavily into the book by somebody who made a huge impression on me to be in that book, there were these sayings I pulled from this book like a mantra, and it was like, I'm recovered, I'm free, I'm free. I can go anywhere on the world where other free men may go without disaster, provided I maintain a simple attitude. And in fairness, the book promised what it delivered. I did go places and didn't pick up a drink. Can't necessarily tell you how I acted on the flight going there, but the big book had delivered on that promise. And I have yet to pick up another drink of alcohol in 18 years. But having said that, I guess mantras and wishful thinking and a pass through the step, and there was a lot wrong with me. I had 2 traumatic brain injuries at 11 and 13. The second one almost took my head off, and it really damaged my frontal precortex. And that is an outside issue. I'm aware of that, but it messed me up. From the time I was 13 on, I felt like I was living in hell. I dreamed every night about being torn to pieces by wild animals and wake up and the day felt no better to me. That's pre-alcoholism. That's pre-taking a drink. And then, of course, the drink came in, but that's not what I suffer from, because I have that acute sensitivity, that burning feeling on my skin, like everybody's paying attention to me. Untreated alcoholism feels a bit like going to the doctor's office to get, I don't know, when they got to get down there with a camera and, like something like that. And you get that feeling like, all of a sudden it feels like everybody's reading my mail, and that acute sensitivity all over yourself. And so I had both, right? And I thought, well, one trip through the steps, I got a God in my life, and we're clear, and it's just recovered on down the road, smooth sailing from here. And I guess why I'm talking to you about that is because I never picked up a drink again. And having said that, that wasn't my experience. I was sponsored by a guy, some of you know him, his name's Mickey out of Colorado, and he always had these one-liners, but he used to say things like, son, you've been out there riding fences too long. And he used to say, the problem with you is you've been trying to live on Planet Jeff all these years. And you know what? Planet Jeff doesn't even exist. And that kind of is where I get into trouble. So let's get current, and then we'll kind of back up. Because this was interesting to me. I had an awakening last week. I had been flirting with smoking cigarettes again. I've been a non-smoker for a long time, but I've been flirting, and all of a sudden it was like I was just pack a day all in. It's an outside issue, I get it. But to me, it was like, sometimes you only see the caboose, and it's like, we were at a retreat, a few of us on the mountain. I was telling people, like, I don't know why I'm doing it. I know it makes me feel awful. I know it doesn't align with my morals and values, and I don't know why I'm doing it. I'm just doing it, right? And so I've been taking this summer course, and I've been building this new business, and work is getting busy, and we'll kind of speed this up here. So I'm taking this summer course, right? They give me my email login, right? And they say, okay, we're going to send you your books in the mail. I'm like, that's great. Books coming in the mail. So I get a big red one and a big green one and a little bit smaller of a blue one. And then here's your online login. And you guys, every time I go to take an online test, I'm like banging my head against the wall. Like, what am I reading? What am I studying? And so I read all 3 books, and I made thousands of flashcards. But every time I go to take this test, I'm tearing through all these pages, and it's like, Brian Percox, we were just talking 2 weeks ago, and I told him, I said, Brian, it feels like the wheels are coming off here, right? And I had an intuitive thought to call my professor in Houston. I'm in Dallas, he's in Houston. I said, hey, I ain't gonna bug him. Reason I ain't gonna bug him, it's just not my style, right? I'm not gonna bug him. Well, I'm sitting there last week, and all my books are on the table, all my papers are on the table, and I noticed something I never noticed before. On the cover of the red book and the blue book and the green book, it says course 1, course 2, and course 3. And I'm like, very interesting, because online the courses are called course 1, course 2, and course 3. And I go to take this test, and every time I went to take a test, there's a test and something's written, I don't know what it says, you know what I mean? And I stopped to read it, and it said, in order to take this test, read the green course 3 manual, pages 265 to 374. You guys, I swear to God, this sounds silly, but this was new information. And I was like, oh. And I guess what I'm getting at, when my energy gets locked up here, see, I see the symptoms of it out here. I'm spending money, I'm getting into something, I'm doing something I'm not supposed to be doing. And but right, like I'm like the last to know. I don't know what's going on with me until suddenly I become keenly aware. I'm like a dog at the dog park pulling at the leash of life. And I get so busy and busy-minded and so locked into here in my thinking, not only I can't even follow basic instructions, because when it comes down to it, I can't even see them. You guys, I have a history going back, like, let's just talk about alcoholism for a minute. Do you know I work in a healthcare professional field? There was a time in my tenure I did not receive supervision for 2 years. After about, I don't know, 19 months of not professional supervision, it occurred to me, maybe I want to ask these people what's going on. Like, hey, how come everyone else around here gets clinical and professional supervision and I get none? And I asked him one day, how come I don't get any clinical supervision? And you know what I was told? Because you are absolutely unapproachable. The last time I tried to talk to you about your work performance, you said, I'm going for a walk, and you slammed the door in my face. You're so good at your job, we didn't want to fire you, but we know we couldn't talk to you, and we could certainly never be the littlest bit critical of you. See, when I'm in untreated alcoholism, I'm almost unemployable, right? And I'm like the last to know, right? I'm the last to know, I'm the last to know. But I'll tell you, but there's two sides to that coin, right? Sometimes I think this idea of spiritual maintenance and spiritual fitness, when I'm not spiritually fit, it feels like I'm dancing on the head of a pin and it's unsustainable. When I am spiritually fit and everything just kind of clicks and it's connected together, it seems so easy that it's effortless, right? Like I heard somebody say on the mountain, my 12 step, when I'm in tune with my 11 step, my 12 step is effortless. People get helped just by simply me being around, you know. And I'll tell you a quick story, and then I don't know where we're going from here. I told this to one of my sponsees one day. It seemed like a dumb story to tell, but he thought it was pretty remarkable. So you guys, it's one of those days, I'm back in Tucson. I wake up and I'm like pretty clear, and like it's just one of those days where that coffee, that aroma hits you just right, and that air, that sky is just that crisp blue, and there's a little breeze coming in through the window, and everything just feels good, right? And my prayer felt bright, it felt colorful, it felt creative. I just felt very still. And I looked at my shopping list, and okay, I'm going to go to Whole Foods, right? So I go to Whole Foods, and I'm walking through the produce aisle, and I don't know, I just like gigging people, you know. And there's a guy with a New York Mets hat on, and I said, buddy, what's up with your Mets, brother? Hey, did you go to that Subway Series? He says, my man, what do you know about the Subway? What do I know about the Subway Series? Well, what do you know about that? And pretty soon we're cutting up, and I'm dogging his sports team, and I don't know where we're going, but this is going on for a while. He's got his hand on my shoulder, and he's laughing so hard he's crying. And I'm like, come on, man, give me the eggplant. Where's it? I know you're hiding the good stuff in the back. And we're just cutting up. We're laughing. We're talking. This older lady's sitting there with her grocery cart. And I noticed her out of the corner of my eye, she'd been watching us, right? And he finally goes to the back. And she walks over to me and she said, hey, I just needed to make a remark on something. I think it's so neat that you saw your best friend in the store and that you guys just get to have that exchange while he's at work and while you're shopping. And I said, with all due respect, man, I've never met that person before in my life. And I hadn't. There's a line in the back of the book that says, people were drawn to us as never before, but it's not me they're drawn to. There's this spiritual thing happening, right? When I'm in recovery. And it's always my intention, hope, and wish to stay there. It's my effort of all my work to stay there. And yet, like Mickey said, like he told me at 10 years, you ain't well. You are emotionally an extremely emotionally damaged human being. And so I kind of live between these two poles in this space called recovery, and I live between them without a drink. My manifestation has never been a drink in my hand, and I thank God for that every day. There have been other manifestations. My friend Tim in England, he describes, this is really a kind of a 10-step thing, but he describes recovery like this. He said, think of life as a jar, and every little selfishness is another pebble in the jar, and every little dishonesty is another pebble in the jar, and every little resentment is another pebble in the jar. But when the jar fills up, I drink. It's real simple, right? The problem is, I'm not always clear how big the pebbles are, nor am I all that clear how big the jar is. So we continue to do this work. Sometimes I think I've done a lot of work in Alcoholics Anonymous. I'll just flash my AA resume and we'll get it out of the way. I've been published by AAWS 4 times. I'm a writer. Went into jails and prisons for about 4.5 years. Had a couple of intergroup deals. Have sponsored many. Have had a pretty good regimen of prayer and meditation for a long time. I've been through the big book 6 times. And I'm not saying that out of virtue, and that's not to say that I'm more recovered than anybody here, because here's the truth that I believe. I felt like I did all of that work to barely squeeze under the door at least a couple of times. There were a couple of times, once at 10 years, where my life in recovery was on the line, and I knew it. Where I couldn't sleep for 6 months. Me and the ex-girlfriend, I talked about this on the last time. I guess I was kind of tripping out on that. There was a period where I thought about my parents and I felt nothing. And then I thought about her and I felt nothing. And it scared me, you guys. And I thought, what am I,
You froze
sociopath?
up for like 2 minutes, Jeff. Can you go back? Can we rewind that two minutes? You froze up for about 2 minutes. It's good.
Sure.
You were breaking up with your girlfriend.
Yeah. And so my sobriety was on the line at that point, and I knew it. And it was that tipping point. And I've seen a lot of people at that 10-year mark at that tipping point drink, and they didn't come back, right? Now, leading up to that, I began to feel pretty numb to everything around me, including her. And I felt joy when I was working with guys, and there was a little pat on the back. And one day she looked at me and she said, "Do you love me?" And I said, I was looking for a feeling. And I said, "I don't know." And she said, "Well, you got to leave now. Grab a bag and go. And we'll talk about it." I was supposed to be gone for 3 months. I ended up being gone 6. And I was in a lot of pain. I couldn't sleep. And I guess we're just talking through this, right? And I thought, fuck this not sleeping thing, man. Why don't you just do what everybody else does? Screw a prescription, screw a pharmacy. And I just got on some Chinese I'm going to order a Chinese website. You want 500 Ambien? Yeah, that sounds good. And you guys, I got half my credit card number in 4744882. Oh boy, what are you doing, man? And I clicked out of the website. I went to work the next day. A guy with a heavy Chicago accent said, "Hey, I noticed you were having trouble filling out the rest of that credit card application. Let me help you out over the phone." And I just hung up, click, and I was like, either this is the cops or this is the mafia, and I don't want anything to do with it. But it was that 10-year mark where I couldn't sleep. I was in a lot of emotional pain. It was funny because I thought I felt nothing, and yet in the absence of, I was in all this emotional pain, right? And so it was just a weird spot to be in. So that's kind of this dance I do between recovery and like the darkness that lives in my head, the darkness that lives in my heart, and trying to walk in the light and get closer and closer. This isn't about getting closer and closer to the instructions in the big book. I've been through the damn thing 6 times. I know what it says. This is about getting closer to where that path leads me to God and really inviting all the way in, because I like wander off and do my own stuff. I think it's just my nature to be that way. You know, when I was talking about the Pebble thing, I didn't really read this. It's been my experience. I've seen it, but it says, this is from There's a Solution on page 23. You ask him why he started on that last bender, the chances are he would offer you any one of 100 alibis. Alibis is an interesting word. Sometimes these excuses have a certain plausibility, but none of them really make sense in the light of the havoc an alcoholic drinking bout creates. And then going down to the next paragraph, sometimes these drinkers have excuses with which they are satisfied part of the time. And I say that because when I'm not in my spirit and I get in my head, now I'm in the place where my alcoholism lives and comes from, and it starts to generate its own thoughts, opinions, judgments, certainly resentments on its own power. And like that jar says, when it fills up, I drink. But it's not enough for me. You know, I might suffer a mental blank spot one day, and that may be the end of me. But I think it's more going to be prone to what the book says, excuses and alibis, right? Because I need a good excuse to do it. I can't just go break everyone's heart and pour a bottle of Jack Daniels down my throat. I need an Aunt Mary. I need an Aunt Sally. Is there an Uncle Rick that could please drop dead any minute and give me a good reason to go do what I want to do? Because I'm in a lot of pain. And the pain I'm in has nothing to do with Aunt Rick or Aunt Sally. Like it says, if you ask him why he did it, but in his heart, he doesn't know why he did it, right? I just get so full of the stuff I generate that my life in here is intolerable to me. It's been my experience. You know, a couple of things about that whole, we're just kind of, I don't know where this dance is going, right? One of the most interesting things to me, I missed this forever. To me, this is the most interesting consideration of the 4-step. It's just where I'm at now. On page 64, it said, we listed people, institutions, or principles with whom we were angry. And then I love, you blink and you might miss it. It says we asked ourselves why we were angry. It's like the big book's asking you, what's bugging you, man? Right? There was something going on. It used to be a scarcity, but since Zoom, its number increased tenfold, right? I thought, what the hell? Are we going to just do this every weekend now? That's just fine. You know, this is like 6 weeks ago. And then I had to stop and ask myself, what's bugging you, man? Why's it got to be like that? We asked ourselves why we were angry. To me, that's the most profound question. Like I said, we hide ourselves from ourselves. It asks a different version of the question. In Fear, it says, we asked ourselves why we had them. Again, like kind of what's bugging you, man? And as soon as I scratch the surface and get beneath it, you know, sometimes there's a whole lot there. My friend used to say, resentments are like cockroaches. For everyone you see on the floor, there's about 10 more hiding in the wall. You know what I mean? And so it's kind of like that. So, you know, I'll tell you a little bit about, I don't know, let me check the time. The last time I gave this talk, you know, it was really more circumstantial, and it was more like really kind of guts on the table stuff. I'll tell you, my sponsor, who I love deeply, and I'm not going to share his story, we talked at depth, man to man, soul to soul yesterday, and I heard the pain in his heart that was born of circumstance, and it was unchangeable. It was unavoidable, right? I told him I didn't believe it was a mistake. Somehow those circumstances were meant there to change him, to soften him. And I'll tell you, I've been changed and softened by my own circumstances. I'm doing, you guys, in terms of life, my life is in spring, like Don Coyce talks about winter, spring, summer, fall. I mean, I am in love. I had a fabulous Fellowship of the Spirit wedding in November, and it was like, well, I'll tell you this about that wedding. I remember being in jail when I was 20, and I remember sitting there. He had a lot of time to. I've always been a guy with kind of vivid imagination. I remember thinking, I wonder what it would be like to be in love. You know, I remember sitting in that jail cell saying, I wonder what it would be like to be in love, and I pictured just sparks and light flying through the air, and I pictured me smiling at this person, and they were smiling back, and I was humming this song, old John Denver song, right? And you know, come November, right? It was like the weather was shit on Friday and Saturday, but we had that Sunday wedding, and it was like God cleaved open the sky, and there was sunshine exactly for 6 hours, and we got together and we made this thing happen. And our favorite chef in Dallas was there, and our favorite musician in Dallas was there, and that song was in his catalog. It was the one he knew well, and he played it well, and everybody pulled out these big sparklers, and there was just like light shooting through the air and sparks. And I remember thinking, this is everything I pictured and everything I hoped it would be. And so, like, business has been okay and life's been okay, and it's taken an awful lot to get here. I've gone broke 4 times in the last years. I mean broke. I mean like $8 in checking and nothing in savings, and being dangled over the edge of the cliff, not knowing where my life was going. There was a point at about 13 or 14 years. It was my worst fear, and I made peace with it. There was a point at 13 or 14 years. I had a great resume. I could not find a job. I had spent all my money. There was a pile of bills on the counter. The drivetrain had twisted in half on the truck. And the 12-year girlfriend, it had all fallen apart. We had exchanged rings, but we had gotten back together. But at this point, we're not even talking, right? Let alone communicate. We don't even sleep in the same room. And it had just been that way. And the worst of my fears at that time wasn't to drink. It was like, dude, you're going to end up back on a 10-speed bike, like pumping gas at a full-service gas station, living on your mom's couch or something like that. And I actually made peace with that. If that's to be my fate, and if that's to be the next leg of the journey, I accept that. Maybe I'll get healthy on a bicycle, and maybe I'll get closer to my mom, you know, but it wasn't to be. And I went broke a couple more times, and then you know, I'm going to tell you a couple lessons I learned. And then Bill Wilson said, if we fail to perfect and enlarge our spiritual life, we will not survive the low spots ahead, the trials and the low spots ahead. And I had a friend, Kenny, and he was in Silver City, Colorado, and he shared with me this realization. Silver City's just a little town. He was an artisan up there. He'd sell cowboy art at the little, you know, on the corner, the little fair, had a little booth or something. And he said one guy came up to him, and this stuck with him, and it stuck with me when he told me the story. He said one day a guy came up to him and kind of, hey, Kenny, I can't stop drinking, and I don't feel well, and I feel crazy. And Kenny said, yeah. He said, hold on, let me ring up this artwork. And he turned to the guy and he said, yeah, I think there's a meeting up there, maybe on Wednesday or Thursday, and might want to check that out and get online. There's a little bulletin. I'll tell you where to go. And he was reading, I think he was in Silver City or Silverton or something. In the Silverton newspaper the next day, this guy had hung himself. They found him hung in a tool shed. And he said, I had this realization that my 11th step is not about me selling art. It's not about me doing well. It's about expanding my awareness. So when that guy shows up in my life the next time, if there ever were to be a next time, I can stop what I'm doing, quit selling and writing receipts, and give this person your full intention. Other people's lives depend on what we do here. That is what we're doing here, right? And he said it was a missed opportunity, and it was a mistake, and it was I hope one I never make again. And out of that, he also told me these disciplines, and these are disciplines, we don't do these disciplines. Yeah, it's nice to meet a guy in a grocery store and you're hugging and you're laughing. That's the gifts of the program. That's the joy. But that's not why we do the disciplines. We do the discipline. So when our life is on the line and alcoholism reaches out and it's got our hand around our neck again, we got a good shot at getting through this, because without, we got nothing, right? And I will tell you, I was at Brian Percox's on September 19th, and Jackie's sister, Jenny, called me. I like Jenny. She's a therapist. She works across the street from the New York Empire State Building in Manhattan. And I answered the phone and I said, "To what do I owe the pleasure?" And she says, "My sister's dead. She committed suicide." I spent 12 years of my life. We were like the Katie and Charlie at Tucson, Arizona, sponsored everybody. A question was answered for me. I'm not a sociopath. It's funny that I didn't know the depth my heart could love until I no longer had the ability to do so. But I felt that one. And I was like walking around. You know, it's funny. I grew up in punk rock. Like half those guys are dead. And then in Alcoholics Anonymous, we lose a lot. You work in treatment, you lose a lot there too. I mean, I'm no stranger to the curtain calling, right? It's something I deal with all the time. But all I can say is this was different when it was the person that knew you best, when it was the person that built a life, and when it happened like that. I mean, I was walking around for 2-3 weeks with like one shoe untied, and people are texting me, "Hey, I'll see you at Starbucks. I'm looking forward to talking business with you." I have to text them back. I don't know who you are or what Starbucks is. And I said, "Listen, I'm not doing well. And hey, I'll give you, people gave me a pass." I think people understood. And her spirit woke me up one day. I had a lot of my old ideas that were discharged. Her spirit came and woke me up twice. And once she wanted to step on my toes and dance with me a little bit. I remember that. I was grateful for that. But it was about a week later, and I woke up at 5 in the morning, and there was a closeness there. And rather than tell you about it, I just thought, because I wrote about it, I just thought I'd read you what I wrote, if you don't mind. It says, 5 a.m. thoughts. When our paths first crossed, and I will always remember this, one of the things that struck me was your care and concern for the marginalized and the downtrodden. I watched you in your neat and professional pantsuit share coffee and cigarettes with a man who had a foul odor and a misshapen physique. There was an inclusive and saintly glow about the whole thing, and it spoke deeply of good character. Being awkward and mostly chicken, I remember trying to leave a folded note under your windshield. That's true. That was a long time ago. A number to call should you accept the offer to go with me. I abandoned and dismissed my own strategy for what it was, a throwback of earlier years for lack of any skill in making conversation. I threw the note away. Had he not approached me some months later, I don't know what would have become of all those years in between, so I'm grateful that you did. You were a quirky and magnificent light that touched many, for whom the stories of your past never corroborated with the person I had known. Such is the gift of real recovery. When our living deportment becomes so strong, our past seems unimaginable in light of our present. You exemplified that to me. I love that you picked fresh flowers and put them in your hair. I love that you pulled your tortoise around the block in a little red wagon. And that tandem bike we bought was always good fun. I miss the proverbial chapel of wellness we grew, that hundreds came to with problems of every type. We worked hard on them and for them, and we worked it all out together. I've held some regret, I think, in the years I might have shown up better, but thinking it through this morning, you were a safety net and an understanding champion who let me show up and grow from the starting point I was clearly at. Your patience and unwavering solidarity taught me to live well, though in ways it was a slow process. To you, I owe all the credit. You built a home for us with nice things and higher thread count sheets. Of course, it was just stuff, but for someone who turned feral, it meant a great deal. You exuded class at every step because that's who you were. You were well loved by many, not the least of which me. And I keep coming back to a vision. The sun is shining and I'm seeing us in a car winding through the desert with the windows down and the music playing. When I remember you, this is the visual that comes the strongest. And somehow I try to make sense of that imagery. Where are we going? I realized when I woke up this morning, my simple vision wasn't a question of where we were going, but of a road well traveled in all the places we've been. Thank you a million times over for being the biggest part of many of the best years of my life. Rest peacefully. You know, God's this great lesson planner, and I don't know or understand what the lesson is. I don't know how I'm going to be softened or changed by the events of my life. I just know that they are, and it is what it is. And if I'm not doing my own work, I can't receive that. Like, I got to tell you guys, some really beautiful gifts came out of that. And I'm very much in love with Hillary, my wife. I didn't tell you this. That funeral and that wedding were 1 week apart. You talk about I had to ask permission to grieve because I felt that. And, you know, some old ideas that were discharged along the way. I don't know, you guys. I'm just talking now. I kind of always thought I had this old idea. I've always drug it around with me. It stemmed from an old idea that I came to prejudice. I came to my step 2 with that. Somehow all my deceased relatives were watching me and they were not impressed. And they're kind of up there in collusion with God. And it's like they're looking down like, oh, geez, you know, Christ. And but even then, even after doing all this spiritual work and re-examining my ideas to thoughts, not so much thoughts of an afterlife. I haven't spent a lot of time in inventory. But you guys, I always thought we carried our shame with us. Like when we crossed over or whatever, I always thought we showed up kind of like, sorry, you know, I did the best I could or whatever. And they were like, yeah, it's cool, you know. And so I was at a couple of things happened. I won't tell you because it's certainly not your business. It's barely even my business. I won't tell you how she was found, but it wasn't pretty, right, at all. And in the Jackie I knew that was from Greenwich, Connecticut and enjoyed 600 thread count sheets, I don't think she'd want to be found or seen that way. I'll just leave it at that. But her sponsor was sharing with me. She came to her in a dream and she said, man, you were a great person. Jackie said to her, yeah, a lot of people have been saying that lately, you know. And I'll tell you one thing that came to me, and this is what changed the idea. I think in life, Jackie would have been jealous of Hillary. As a matter of fact, I know it. I already know that for a fact because that was the circumstance at the time. But in that very abstract, dreamlike way, Jackie showed up in my sleep. And she was covering with a sparkling white light. And she told me, I really want to meet Hillary. And I woke up and I didn't say anything. And I was just like, you know, that presence was there and then it was gone. But here's the remarkable part. I didn't say anything. And 2 days later, Hillary woke up. And she said, Jackie came to meet me. And it made me realize, like, she left her jealousy or whatever was going on this side. She didn't carry any of that with her. And that discharged the old idea that I've had, that I've always had, that there's nothing to be afraid of and nothing's wrong. It's not something I welcome happening tomorrow. But it's nice to be set free, right, from these old ideas and this bondage we carry that we didn't even know we had. And so my prayer life is an interesting one. I often pray to God, you do what you got to do to get my attention. And if that means breaking a leg, I accept that. If that means torching the computer, I accept that. You do what you got to do to get my attention, because I'm pretty thick and I don't get it always, right? And I used to pray misfortune for myself, and I've never been under the pretense that, oh, God was like, oh, we were getting ready to have a good roll of things, but since you're praying misfortune, here you go. I don't think God gave me the car wreck. I just think that when the unfortunate thing happened, whatever it was it made me more in alignment with it. Like, oh yeah, I prayed for this, so it's okay, right? It makes me fight a little less against the reality of my life. It makes me want to hide a little less from the reality of my life. And I do crisis work every day, just about every day now. It's busy, and almost everything is life and death. I mean, it's never easy. And all I can tell you guys is I've tried to build a shelf right here, not to hide out on, but to rest upon in myself. It's a shelf by which I look out from the world, and it's a shelf on which I pause and stop, and I'm constantly asking God the right thought or direction, not so I can look good, not so I can feel good, but because the person I'm in the room with, their life depends upon me doing the right thing. And if I'm telling you the truth, and I've talked to Brian about this, he's my business partner, he tells me I'm great at what I do. But I got to tell you, walking in the room, I don't feel confident. I don't. And so I just build that little shelf, and I just say, show me what to do next, show me what to do next, show me what to do next. And it tends to turn out pretty well. You know, I'll say this, and I might have said this last time. I have made my peace a long time ago. If you were to see me, watch me walk, if you didn't know me and you saw me walking in a grocery store, you'd see something like this. And you think, oh man, that poor bugger, like he's off his meds, like something's really wrong with him, like he's screwed up. But I'm a guy that's made peace walking around looking like I'm whispering all the time, but I'm not whispering, I'm praying. And the reason I'm praying all the time is because it seems like I need help. And our book says better men than we are using it constantly. And I want to be better than I was before. I want to have an open heart. I don't want to shut down and go cold and aloof and cold fish to the people in my life that care about me most. I want to feel the magic of recovery and connect to you. I want to be able to connect to my sponsees when they call me on the phone and not pull back and retreat and go into my mind and go into like the places that I go. And so, Sam, I don't know if that was a good talk or not. I didn't know where we're going. We're just on a train going south, right? And I'm just kind of telling you, near as I can tell, what I think Bill meant when he was talking about the topic. But like, you know, the book talks about chronic alcoholism and the real alcoholic, and I think almost everybody on this page has what I got. And if you got what I got, it takes a lot of work, and it takes a lot of sitting still, and it takes a lot of not running from yourself and turning and facing your problems squarely at every given opportunity. You know, that's just what it takes, and that's what it means for me to be in recovery. And it's not been an easy path always. So anyway, I'm Jeff. I'm an alcoholic. Thanks for letting me share, guys. I appreciate you.
Oh, Jeff, that was so beautiful, man. Thank you so much for sharing. And I really relate with so much of that, especially there's that part, you know, where you talk about where I feel so stoic about life in a certain degree. And I'm like, do I feel love right now? Do I feel this right now? And then I have these huge abilities and capability to feel pain and feel these waves of emotion. It's just, they're just not manageable by me, you know, like they come when they come, you know, and they come when they're supposed to. But what I think is really interesting about the essay is that when he talks about cutting off these faulty, we have to exert every ounce of will and prayer to cut off these faulty dependencies at depth. And I mean, you can't realize you have this faulty emotional dependency for security just upon money if you've got a lot of money, you know, like getting your ass kicked here and there and going broke every now and then, that puts that dependency back where it needs to be. And it's so much better when all of a sudden that prosperity comes back to you, but there's not that reliance on it. And you remember like, oh yeah, I remember what it was like, you know, when I was just terrified about losing it all the time and my emotional security was all wrapped up in it, or that relationship. And I think that we're able to love and appreciate so much more freely. But I think part of that is like prying off this scrap metal that's just kind of gotten welded onto us over the years, you know. And some of these, anyway, I just thought it was beautiful, man. I really appreciate you sharing that. So what I want to do is we'll open it up, or actually you want to call on a couple people, Jeff? That's kind of how we started doing it, kick it off.
Sure. Is Mary Thayer still on the call? I'd love to hear from her tonight.
Yeah, yeah. There she is.
Hi, Jeff. Thanks a lot. Really appreciated hearing you tonight. I so agree. This is such a process. And I'm sometimes the last one to know what feeling I'm having. But I also, I just talked this afternoon, so I feel as if I should just shut up, type thing. But I really hear what you said about having gone through the book so many times, and then all of a sudden, I know what's in the book. What do I have to do? And I appreciated how you shared that that's really a process of finding this connection deep down inside, because if I don't enlarge on that connection, I'm not going to face the certain trials and low spots ahead. And having been kind of in your field in a way, I deal a lot with, I was a crisis social worker too, and so forth. I realized that those are times that are split seconds, so to speak, to really be able to touch somebody's soul. And I have to be aware that there are tools that I've connected with myself, in order to be able to share with others. I love the story of meeting that person and not even knowing them in the grocery store, and just being able to share without any difference. I'm kind of similar to that. I have a sponsee that lived in Boston area for a while, and they have Dunkin' Donuts, and I love Dunkin' Donuts. And in New England, nobody talks to anybody. And so we were in Dorchester in some Dunkin' Donuts, and some guy came in with a Patriots hat or something like that. Hear me, Brenda? Patriots are good in Boston. And I had quite a nice conversation with him. And when we left, I remember Heather said, "Did you know, why do you talk to people?" I said, "Because they're people and I'm standing next to them." And you're right. The people, there's something that happens in this program where they, I think it's described in Bill's story when he sees Ebby and he says, there's something in Ebby's eyes. What had gotten into him? Very interesting thing. What had gotten into him? And he had a change of heart. And I think when that change comes, people start to find or feel that presence that is around us. And we have an opportunity to walk into other people's souls and find they're not as different. They're not different than us at all. Thanks, my friend. Blessings. Suppose you want me to call on somebody, right? There's somebody on here I want to hear from. Heather. Heather sent me beautiful flowers today. A celebration of my original sponsor's anniversary, and mine's coming up in a few days. And Heather, unmute yourself and whatever, and come speak with us.
Come on with it, Heather.
I am Heather. I'm an alcoholic.
Heather?
Thanks, MT. I was having a nice, peaceful evening, and now my heart is like up in my throat. Thank you, Jeff. It's funny. I feel like this essay, all you can be is raw and honest, because it's just set up that way. I've been thinking a lot about it, and I've been thinking a lot about the unnatural dependencies. And that line has been, the last 3 to 4 weeks, it just kind of keeps coming up and coming up. And I've been sort of just looking back over all the ways in which I've tried to make myself safe and give myself relief that didn't include God. And it happened way before I ever picked up a drink, way before I ever started drinking. All I wanted was safety and relief. And it came from fantasy in the beginning, and pretend that the whole world was dead. This was my favorite fantasy. Whole world is dead, and it's just me. and I had a little empty, you know, beat up, burned out VW bus that I used to hang out in by myself. And I used to pretend that was my whole world. And I loved it in there. And I hated it when I had to go back home and go back to reality. So it's a funny thing. There is something in me that from a young child has always been looking for some way to be safe. But I didn't have the language of God. So all I had was that idea that I had to do it for myself because nobody else was going to do it for me. And, you know, and even in sobriety, Mary Thayer talks a lot about the road gets narrower and the horizon gets broader. And now there have been things that she has said to me for 5, 8, 10 years. And I'm like, yep. And then one day I just really get it. And I didn't realize how much I had placed on food for relief. One day I was all jammed up about something and I thought, I just want to go and get French fries. French fries are going to make me feel better. And I went and got the French fries and nothing happened. I didn't feel any better, except I was annoyed that this one little thing no longer worked. And I finally understood that the road got narrower and the horizon got broader. But it's that I keep coming back to that place where I think I know what it is I need to do to make myself better. And I have to get beaten into a state of reasonableness over and over again before I'll go to God. And I think that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Hey, Jeff, you know, I really, one of the things I relate, I just related so much to your share, and I really appreciate the honesty that you brought out there and needing to do a lot of work in AA just to sometimes squeak under the door. And also to having a beautiful life, but at the same time having, you know, I mean, being able to feel deeply on both things and having rich experiences in both ways. I mean, I think the hair on my arms was standing up where you were talking about, you know, grieving that death and some of that stuff, man. I mean, I was like, wow, man, it's just, I really connected to that on a heart level. Hey, you know, before we go any further, I really, since we've opened it up and we have a bunch of different people, I love that story about the kid on the airplane. Can you tell, do you care about saying, I hate to say play it again, you know, like that's what if I watch the movie of Jeff Gould, you know, I'm going to rewind it to that spot and press play because it's such a good, you know, it goes great on your highlight reel, bro. You gotta tell the kid in the airplane story.
I'm happy to, Sam. It's so funny. We're all kids at heart. The last time Tom told me to tell the story, and so in that sense, we're all like kids. I remember, what was it? Steve Lee from Nashville was speaking at FOTS, and I elbow him. I'm introducing him. I'm like, will you tell the hamburger story, please? And so anyway, yeah, so this was like a few years ago. Here's the long version. After that 12 years of having a girlfriend and all that, I had to spend a lot of time in 68 through 71. And, you know, it took me a while to find out what my ideals and my values were. I'm going to keep this on the shorter end, although I've given a good hour talk on this many times in the past year. But I thought eHarmony and, you know, eHarmony and that's what we're doing here, and swipe left and swipe right. And it's 2017. That's how people meet nowadays. And it's just a different world, Jeff. You need to understand. And what I didn't understand or wasn't paying attention to is that I was suffering the whole time. I'll say this, waking up next to a stranger to me, and I'm watching the digital clock, wondering in my head, full of fear, how long is a reasonable amount of time to nudge them with my elbow and ask them, like, make up some lie? I got to go to work. Like, you got to go, you know? To me, that feels like taking a drink of alcohol. We had a great night last night, and I am not feeling good this morning. And it took me several of those experiences, and Mike M told me one full rotation of the moon I want you to work with the prayers on page 71 every day. And there's a number of them, and I'm gonna lay them out for you. And he said, I can't promise you you'll get a girlfriend, and I can't promise you won't misbehave. All I can promise you is you'll change. But what I found out that I valued inside was I don't want to give away that part of myself freely. I don't want to take that part of myself lightly, as the book says, and I don't want to despise it and loathe it either. And when I was in the act of cross interviewing people for good partners and, hey, let's go check it out and see if it's a good match, that's exactly what I was doing. I was taking it lightly, and I suffer, and I hurt other people doing it. Anyway, if you're out there in eHarmony, good luck with that. Not for me. So it was reading one of those inventories. It was, I remember it was about November. And I woke up and I just couldn't stand myself. And sometimes, sometimes I think our first steps feels like a death sentence, but when you're in it, when you're really in it and you're seeing the same behavior again, your 6-step material, your list, it feels like a life sentence. Like, how will I ever change? Will I ever be different? Why do I keep, And it was one of those mornings. It was reading the same inventory again for the same misbehavior again. And I just felt sick of who I was and how I am and the things I do and the fact that I do it again, right? And so I woke up and I read my inventory. I considered my first 5 proposals leading up to that inventory. And I woke up and, can you hear me okay, Sam? Okay. So I woke up and I'm like, okay, I got a flight to catch, but I'm going to do my 6 and 7 prayers. So I said my 7-step prayer, and it was really heartfelt. It was like, God, I said the 7-step prayer. And I'm like, I want to be different. And I don't know why I said this, but I said, God, push me out into the stream of life. Thy will, not mine, be done. Whatever you want me to do and be, I'll do and be. But I said that, push me out into the stream of life. Then I checked my watch. I got to go to the airport, guys. I got to get going. Grab the noise canceling headphones, grab the New York Times. I'm like, A flyer list and fire exit row C. I'm an experienced traveler, like, believe that. And so, you get on boarding group A because that's how I board, and you get your paper and you get your headphones and everybody get away, and all that. And they're just getting ready to close that cabin door. And I'm like, the seat next to me is open. Love that. We're good. They're just getting ready to close the door. And that last couple comes on, and here comes the judgment, right? Like, come on, you guys. If you've never taken a flight before, didn't you know? But they're Karen twins, babies, little ones. And I'm thinking, oh no, here they come. And they're coming. And they're coming. And there's an empty seat in the middle in front of me. And the seat next to me is empty. And he sits right there. And here she comes. Don't do it. Oh no. She sits down next to me. And with a baby. And I'm like, okay, well, not getting what you want today. But I had a moment of softness or kindness in my heart, and I fold my newspaper, put it away. I take off my headphones for a minute, and I turn to her and say, I couldn't help but notice you and your husband have a new family. They were little weeks old, 3 weeks, 5 weeks old. I said, I couldn't help but notice you and your family are split up, and I think it'd be fine. I can switch seats with him. I'll take the middle seat, and you and your husband can sit together. And she says, that is so kind of you to offer. FAA regulations with the mask dropping down and all that, you can only have 1 infant per row. And she says, but I'll tell you what, I've been flying since Long Island. I'm dog tired. Why don't you hold him? I don't know nothing about babies or kids, you guys. I know nothing. She hands him to me, and I'm just like rigid. And she said, rock him. He likes it. So I'm kind of rocking him a little bit, like, eh. She's out like a light, you guys. She's snoring. And he was just little with those big blue eyes. And he was just staring at me, and I'm staring at him. He never cried. He never uttered a word. We just stared at each other for an hour. And pretty soon, I can't stop it. Here come the waterworks. And like, I was just staring into the eyes of God, or something that was really close to God and had just met God. She wakes back up, and I pull my sunglasses down because I don't want to embarrass myself, which I already had, because people are nosy, and everybody on the plane's like, did you see that? That tattooed guy just got stuck holding that baby. But she wakes back up, and I asked her name, and she told me her name. I think she had mentioned she was in Al-Anon or something. We had talked like that, and I gave the child back and what stuck to me, and this is why this is the context I mentioned that story in, and it fits in neatly with the topic. How often in my life is some gift walking towards me, some magical moment of presence and connectivity, and I got my headphones on and my newspaper and my judgment going on? Get away from me. Don't sit next to me. Don't be here. What's your problem? Why are you late? Please don't sit here. Like, I got my own stuff going on. And I had to remember that prayer. I said, push me out into the stream of life. And God said, okay, you want to be in the stream of life? You got it, man. There's a whole mess of that coming for you. And it was a beautiful experience. And I have since talked to new mothers who have heard that story that said the remarkable thing about that is how uncommon it is that a woman with a 3-week-old brand new would hand him over and go to sleep. She said, your presence must have been remarkable that day for that to even happen. And I was like, I don't know about that. I just know that it happened. So there's your story, Sam. Happy to tell it.
Thank you, bro. Thanks for obliging me. Anybody else want to hear from? And then we'll open it up. You pick on another person, Jeff?
Good. Shouldn't you be at, yeah. Uh-huh.
Hey, Jeff, you got anybody else you want to hear from?
Yeah.
You're on mute. Hey, Jeff, you're on mute still. You got to unmute yourself.
How about Wyatt Valentine?
Wyatt Valentine, come on with it.
Hey, I'm Wyatt. I'm an alcoholic. I don't know if
Right.
we say that here on an AA meeting, but wow. Thanks for calling on me, Jeff. I was so moved by your talk in so many ways. And it reminded me of, when you go to a movie and you're like, wow, was that a good movie or whatever? And people come out and go, yeah, man, we laughed and we cried. And that's kind of how I feel about your pitch. It was one of those where you had me laughing and crying, and you spoke from your heart, and I was very moved by all of that. And it's, one of my non-alcoholic mentors, this guy Jim Finley, told me once that God doesn't stop bad things from happening to people, or bad things from happening. I mean, somewhere in the world, maybe a dog's getting kicked by somebody, or someone's abusing somebody, or something bad's happening. But God, He sustains us through the experience. And we have an opportunity to learn whatever lessons He's trying to impart to us. And I mean, for me, it's like, and this whole thing that's going on with the virus and the whole world going crazy, it's been not good for me right now. I mean, physically, mentally, emotionally, economically, socially, it's been like my whole world's upside down. And it's kind of like I'm in, trouble with personal relationships, can't make a living. But at the same time, I'm also in the promises of fear of economic insecurity and fear of people has left me. So it's a kind of a strange situation where I'm in both worlds, and I'm surprisingly buoyant. My attitude seems to be transcending my circumstances, but I have feelings about everything that's going on. And, I'm being forced to make some decisions that, even if it's God's will, doesn't mean it's going to be easy. I was under this idea that, if God's behind me, it's going to be easy, but it's not always easy. I've had situations where I've had to, making amends, for example, or say no to people, or this kind of stuff.
What are you doing?
So just because it's God's will doesn't mean
Why?
it's going to be easy, but He gives me the courage to walk through these awkward and uncomfortable situations. And it's like there's this myth, I think, around recovery that desperation is just for the new people. And it's like, oh, well, I'm too cool to be desperate, and I've been sober for too long to be desperate, and I've done so much work. I'm not desperate. I'm desperation. That's for the new guy. And I've been sober long enough to know that that's not true. And also that it is a gift, and it's one of those gifts that you don't really want to get when you get it. And I'm not sure if I got it right now or not. It's certainly a different flavor of my desperation these days is taking on a different flavor today than it was many years ago. And so it's something to watch and observe. And, as the false dependencies sometimes are taken away, we don't really know what we're depending on until it's gone. And then we kind of faced with this empty void. And that's when our faith comes in. And basically, we're so blessed that we've got a program of action that we can take. Like today, I was just like calling up people and saying, hey, I'm just reaching out to let you know, I've been thinking about you. I appreciate you. I miss you. I don't miss seeing you at the meetings, just to stay connected, some kind of unity. Because I've been like locked down since February, because I got an emphysema attack. I was like down, sick. And then I haven't really been doing anything since for like 6 months or whatever. So it starts grinding me down. So this has been a real joy to hear you share, Jeff. And there's like I think the language of the Spirit is a language of paradox. And so sometimes, the meetings and our program and our fellowship is always a little seed of some kind of mysterious thing going on here with all of us joined together here. We're all getting through this time together. A mysterious seed of hope and faith and joy in our hearts. And we come out of this thing with a little more hope than we went into it. So you gave me that in your share. So when I sign off today, and everybody here that's on this Zoom call and giving me a little seed more of hope that we're going to make it through this, you know what I mean, than I had when I first tuned in. I think that's part of the magic of recovery that we all got going here. We've got God on our side. So anyway, thanks for letting me throw my 2 cents worth in. God bless you all.
Hey, so we're going to open it up, and if you're a participant and would like to share, or if you would like to share, please raise your hand and we'll call on you. If you don't raise your hand, I'll start calling on people. This meeting's tough because nobody ever wants to raise their hand after, like you hear a good share. It's like a really good movie, and then you're just like, man, you just want to go out and chill for a little bit. So you have to kind of stir it up a little bit. Aaron, what do you got, buddy? Aaron H.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Aaron Alcoholic. I had some kebabs brought in to me, man, so you got to forgive me. Yeah. That talk, man, it worked. It gave me an appetite, bro. That was phenomenal. Pardon me. Let me get my stuff together for 1 second. So, yeah, man, I heard you talk. I don't even know what it was, a month or two ago, whenever it was, a few months ago. And like, not trying to, you know what I'm saying, like butter you up or whatever, but man, dude, every time you talk, it's just, there's so many, it's like you're trying to remember, like some will hit you like a once in a while thing, like, damn, that was profound. And then like 45 seconds later, there's another one. And then like 3 minutes, you know what I'm saying? It just keeps happening and happening. But anyway, I can't thank you enough for being here again, sharing and just being so open and vulnerable. So much stuff. I love what you said. You in the beginning, you said, I feel like people are always paying attention to me. And that's a little thing. But I mean, one of the biggest things about my alcoholism is just kind of, I'm just always acutely aware of myself, man. And I feel like people are thinking about me, talking about, or, thinking about me, and none of it's pleasant. They're not like, ooh, there goes that guy. It's always kind of judgy. And I don't know, man. but like what Sam said, just, I don't know, it's hard to follow that, man. I'm usually, I'm never really at a loss for words. People that know me know that, but I don't know, man. I'm really grateful to be here. The whole emotional sobriety thing, it's funny, man. When I come in, I have a chronic case of alcoholism. I mean, for real. And when I came in the first year or so, I mean, it was just all centered around not drinking, Like, if I could just not drink, if I could figure out a way not to pick back up, like, my life will be, you know, pretty glorious. And it just wasn't the case, man. After the monkey gets off my back, as far as alcohol is concerned, the obsession, you know, is relieved. I actually have to like interact with people and be like an upstanding, or, you know, be a productive member of society. And, a lot of my behaviors are not, they don't fit well in society. You know what I'm saying? Like a lot of my go-tos, with or without a drink. And I remember I was at your business one time, and I forget what I was talking about, probably something inappropriate. And I remember Sam, he was like, I don't think I'd be doing that if I were you. And I was like, look, man, I know what I'm doing here, you know. And I remember I said, why do you care how I'm treating somebody or whatever I was doing? I remember he goes, you're a guy that can't even look at somebody the wrong way and stay sober. And I mean, that might've just, he probably doesn't even remember that, but that really hit me between the eyes. Like, and I know what it was. And I'll close with this. I'll let somebody else who's actually got something to say talk. I love that thing about the jar with the, any dishonesty or any, you said it, everyone heard it. I'm not going to repeat it, but boy, that was profound. Like, I swear to God, when I want to do something like cut a little corner or tell somebody off or whatever it is, I swear to God, I'm not scared of this person. And like, I got a couple bucks for an attorney, but I don't want to get drunk again. You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, that really kind of dictates how I act and how I treat people. But I love that. I'm going to steal that. I'm going to give you credit, man. But you can bet your ass some people are going to hear about that jar. So thank you so much for being here tonight, man. I'm honored. You called me up from the minors, Sam, asking me to share, bro. I really appreciate that. So anyway, thank you, everybody. Love y'all. And that's it.
Yeah, man, your jar was about the size of a Gerber jar. I don't remember.
I didn't have much.
Slip on a banana peel and be drunk for like, a month. All right, let's open it up. What about Kate R? What about my friend Kate?
Hey, I'm Kate. I'm an alcoholic. Thanks, Jeff. It was good to hear. And I love that airplane story. The other one I wish you'd tell, and maybe you can tell before we close, is about the story when you're at the conference and there's the deaf lady. I love that story. But yeah, thanks for sharing tonight. I was thinking about what Wyatt said too. And, my experience in sobriety is like, I don't know if it's true, but I have felt at certain times in my sobriety more desperate than I did when I first came in. And I don't know if it's that thing in me, which is whatever crisis I'm presently in always seems like the worst one that's ever occurred. But for me, around sort of just like you, Jeff, 10, 11, 12 years of sobriety, for me was a really critical point. It's kind of like that age, when you have teenagers where it's like, God, I don't know if they're going to make it through this or not. And I didn't know that about my own sobriety. And what I really came to realize during that time, and I think what we're talking about, I went through the steps again with someone, and he said to me, Kate, you've been living from the neck up. We got to get you down into your heart. And, that for me was a huge shift. I think that the knowledge that I'd acquired in AA up until that point was good and was necessary to allow me to go to a place that doesn't make sense anymore. And I'm really grateful for the people that have stood in those places in sobriety that can say, yeah, man, I've been there too, and this is what I did. And I think that, like that point for me was really pivotal. And really dropped me into a different place in terms of connecting in my heart. So, I don't know. I want to be quiet there, Jeff, but will you tell your story, man?
Feel like a DJ. You want me to go for it, Sam?
Do it.
Okay, like the airplane story, this is one of those ones where I sat with the consideration. I'll get to the consideration for a minute. So I got a fellowship of the Spirit every summer, and this is some years back, maybe 6 years back, and it's a Saturday night meeting. It is beautiful, guys. Everyone I love in the world is there. The room's filling up. People are sitting. The flags, if you've been, all the flags are hanging, and people are laughing, and and we're getting heated up, and the speaker starts going out. And keep in mind, I can hear the speaker just fine, and the speaker is bringing it. And I just sit back, and it's just like, to me, that's just my version of heaven, All of a sudden, these two ladies are like whispering in front of me, and I'm looking at them like, now keep in mind, because it bears relevance on the story, I can hear the speaker fine. That's so funny. Why are you two whispering, right? And it was a native and, a Latin woman and a Native American woman. There were one's whispering to the other. And I start thinking like, little AA etiquette here would be nice, right? But I start thinking, they'll stop, right? They keep whispering. And then I'm starting to fidget in my seat. And before too long, I start doing the math on this deal, right? Which is how my resentment goes. It's like, wait a minute. I paid $400 for a plane ticket. I paid $300 for a condominium. I paid $80 for a conference. I paid $900 to hear this damn speaker. I want to hear the damn speaker. What's the problem, man? Are you going to stop talking or not? And finally, and to be fair, I was polite, but I tapped on the woman's shoulder and I said, excuse me, this is really distracting. And they both gave me this little kind of namaste bow. They stood up and walked out of the room. Fine, thank you, God. The guy next to me leans back over his chair and he whispers to me, Jeff, she was deaf in one ear and only spoke Spanish. She was translating the meeting into her ear. Oh my God, good grief. And I was just like, oh. And I got up and excused myself, got out of my row. They're out in the lobby. And I said, come back, please, I'm sorry. I didn't know. I'm sorry, I didn't know. And they said, no, it was distracting. And I said, no, it really wasn't. Like, you're good. Why don't you come on back? And I 10-step with a couple people. But here's the consideration that stuck to me like the other one. How often do I walk around in my life and I think I know what's going on? And I don't mind intruding. I'll just take a pair of scissors and cut you to pieces. And it doesn't look the way I think. And nobody has the heart to tell me, buddy, excuse me, you don't know what the fuck is going on right now. Like, so why don't, and it just stuck with me. Like, I wonder how often I actually do that, because I ain't afraid to speak up. You know what I mean? That was disturbing to me, right? That I live in the context of judgments, thoughts, and opinions, and I act and react from that place without waiting for intuition or a second thought. And I could not have felt any more of a heel, and I could not have been sorrier to those two women. But I didn't know. And that's my problem, right? Sometimes I just don't know. Kate, you're welcome. There's the story. So.
All right, it's opened up. We'd love to hear from some people. We got a few more minutes. Tom?
My name's Tom. I'm an alcoholic.
Tom?
Sober by the grace of God. Thank you, Jeff, so much. I'm pretty wiped out, actually. I don't have a lot to say. I just had some surgery on my gum yesterday. I'm using that as an excuse, actually. But, you know, I love you, and I love being with you. And you're an important part of my life. And thanks so much, Jeff. Appreciate it.
Well, Tom, that wasn't worth a shit. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding with you. What about my beautiful wife, Lauren? Since nobody will raise their hand, why don't I just pick on her? She was on here. You still on here? She's eating Cheez-Its.
Thank you so much, Jeff. What an amazing, Lauren Alcoholic. What an amazing talk. You have so many great stories. And what's really funny, a couple things that I love that you said, you know, like how you were talking about having a shelf right here. And just, it's almost, to me, like from a visual standpoint, just propping your head up and kind of being like, okay, God, please direct my thinking and thoughts. What do I need to do? You know? And I think that that's so great. And the story about the baby, I mean, I was tearing up. I was like, oh my God. And what's funny is Sam has told me that story and I've never heard you tell it. And love you, Sam, but he doesn't do it justice, and just hearing it from you. But it's true. I think we all walk around, you know, that being an alcoholic and being this kind of, you know, just getting in your head and being in the zone, and like you have all these things coming towards you, and it's just about being willing and open, and just kind of letting that come to you. And the fact that you were able to open up in that moment and just be present with, you know, a 3-week-old baby, that's awesome, you know. And that was, you know, it's kind of like a God shot. It's like, hey, this is your chance. This is your moment to really connect. And that, I mean, like literally you were telling that, and I was just like, I had my arms on my hair, or the hair on my arms was standing up. So thank you so much. It was great to finally see you via Zoom, because I've heard wonderful things about you and hear your story. So I really, really appreciate it. So love you.
Nobody's. Oh, Kat V from Philly. Thanks, Lauren. Good cheer, Bunny. Kat, what do you got going on?
Hey, my name's Kat. I'm an alcoholic. Jeff, thank you so much. One of the first things you mentioned that just really caught me was this like acute sensitivity. And I remember feeling that from like the earliest memory I have, this acute sensitivity that everyone noticed everything ugly and dark and weird and strange and separate and less than inside of me. And I was convinced that everyone could see it and sense it. And I was so full of fear, but I had zero awareness how me being full of fear made me unapproachable, right? Which was kind of wild. But yeah, like this noise inside of my head dictates how I feel, and how I feel is the most important thing in the world. And until I discover alcohol that like gives me some relief from how I feel because of how my head makes me, you know, thinks, I'm just barely hanging on by a thread. And then getting here to AA 3 years ago, and he talked about like thinking that, you know, we carry that shame around with us. Like I also thought that I didn't know the mental obsession to drink would be removed. And I would show up before meetings totally emotionally unsober, ranting and raving and crying to my sponsor. And she'd listen calmly. And then she'd ask me if I prayed. She asked me if I helped somebody. And then she asked me like, Kat, did you drink today? Did you ever thought about a drink? When's the last time you had that mental obsession to drink? I wasn't even aware that the mental obsession had been removed because of how emotionally unsober I still was. I was so wrapped up in still how I was thinking, how I was feeling in relation to my personal relationships and my sense of security, that I sort of missed the miracle that happened early in sobriety. And even 3 years in now, like I can get, when you said like I can get so full of the stuff that my brain generates, that I become intolerable, like to others and to myself. And it's only through like being willing to become vulnerable with women in this program who've helped me get closer to God, that I'm able to give this stuff over to that power, because I don't have the power to turn this noise down at all. Thanks, ma'am.
You know, probably a bad analogy to the whole deal is like, you know, one of my favorite artists is this guy named Jason Isbell, man. He's just beautiful. He's Americana. He sings some incredible stuff. And when you go see a show of his, it's not a stadium rock concert. But you go to like the Ryman and you just listen to that. People who know him love to hear certain songs. I mean, it just really opens you up. And when you get done, everybody's kind of quiet. I think Jeff's kind of like my Jason Isbell of AA, you know. I just like to kind of come in and yeah, it's just deep and rich and really good stuff. So thanks so much, Jeff, again for tonight. Thank you all for hanging out with us. I appreciate it. Thanks for this week. And we will close with the usual fashion. We started to close by just muting and inwardly saying the Lord's Prayer to ourselves in our inner room. And thank you all. Thank you guys all so much.
Thank you.
Good to be here, everybody. Sam, thanks for the second invite. It was good to be back.
Hey, great job, man. Thank you, man. I really appreciate it. And I'll send out the recording on the Fox family page. Like, I post those every week. And then if anybody wants to just message me for any recordings, I'll have that. And Jeff, I'll send you a copy of the recording as soon as it's done.
Sure thing.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
All
Jeff.
right, I gotta jump back on work. I still got work to do tonight. But everybody, it's good to see all my friends and strangers and new friends. Thanks so much. I love spending time with you. Bye.
Thank you.
Yeah,
too,
thank
man.
you.
See you, man.